yeah, thank you everyone, and welcome to our digital lecture recital. It's a really nice intimate crowd, and I'm looking forward to having some good discussion here. My name is Matthew Becker. I'm the composer for the composition that will be performed later tonight, and also one of the hosts for this evening. Joining me is poet Susan Holbrook, who is our guest speaker, and Susan Sale on viola, who will be premiering the Speaking Violist. I want to give thanks to the Canadian New Music Network, specifically with their ConneXions initiative, and Norm Adams for their support in this endeavor. So I'll go over what's on the agenda this evening, and after I fully introduce our guests, Susan Holbrook will then give her talk, after which I'll provide an overview of the Speaking Violist, followed by Susan Sale's premiere, and then we'll open the floor to any questions. We do ask that you keep any questions you have for the question period itself, which is immediately after the performance. For that, you can use the chat to type out your question, or if you prefer to ask your question out loud, you can just let us know that you have a question, and then we'll prompt you to ask it when the time comes. Note that because of the free version of Zoom that I'm using, we'll likely have to restart the meeting partway through. Because we're only permitted 40 minutes at a time. I thought the restriction was removed. I'm not sure if that's still the case or not. So if that happens, we'll just let everyone know that we'll need to restart. So that means everyone will leave the meeting and re-enter it using the exact same Zoom link as before that you used to get in here in the first place. So if you came here from the Facebook page, the website, or an email, just use that same link. Does that make sense? People react with a thumbs up. A thumbs up, yes. Perfect. Okay, good. That makes sense. Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, so now I'll introduce both of our guests this evening, starting with our violist, Susan Sale. So Susan received her musical training in her hometown of Victoria and at McGill University, where she studied with Stephen Kondax and earned a Bachelor of Music degree with honors in performance. A violist in Symphony Nova Scotia since 1986, Susan was appointed principal viola in 1994. During her time in Halifax, Susan has made her mark as a performer, playing with the Dalhousie Chamber Players, Artemis in Toronto, the St. Cecilia Concert Series, Indian River Festival, Concert aux Îles du Bic in Rimouski, Barachois Summer Music, New Brunswick Summer Music Festival, ConneXions Culturelle in France, and many times as soloist with SNS. Susan has taught at Dalhousie University and has been an adjudicator for the Charlottetown and Kings County Music Festivals. Over the years, Susan has been frequently broadcast on CBC Radio and can be heard on many recordings and film scores. She spends her summers in Charlottetown, PEI, playing with the Charlottetown Festival Orchestra. And moving on to our guest speaker, Susan Holbrook's poetry books are the Governor General's Award nominated and Trillium Book Award nominated Throaty Wipes from 2016, Joy is So Exhausting from 2009, which was shortlisted for the Trillium Award for Poetry, and Misled in 1999, which was shortlisted for the Pat Lawther Memorial Award and the Stephen G. Stevenson Award. She teaches North American Literatures and Creative Writing at the University of Windsor. With Thomas Dilworth, she edited The Letters of Gertrude Stein and Virgil Thompson, Compositions as Conversation. Her textbook, How to Read and Write About Poetry, was released in 2015, and in 2017, she edited Intertidal, the collected earlier poems of Daphne Marlatt. So I want to extend my many thanks and appreciation to both of our guests for being here this evening and helping on put this event. So Dr. Holbrook, I now turn things over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Matthew, for organizing this and for your compositions, and to Susan for your performances, and all of you for being with us this evening. I'm going to apologize in advance. I haven't been teaching the last few months, so this is my first time screen sharing, so I'll probably be a little awkward. I do have a teenager standing by, so I have my IT specialist. I'm just going to do a reading here to give you a sense of my poetry and poetics and some of the modes of compositional interest that I'm inclined towards, so you get a sense of the environment out of which the memos appeared. And the memos are the poems that Matthew set. They appear in Throaty Wipes, which is that 2016 volume from Coach House Books. And I've been fortunate to have a number of different composers pick up poems from this book to set. And it's always a really exciting development and a gift. And in this case, it was also surprising because the memos, the poems that Matthew chose are these really tiny, sort of minimal poems that are dispersed throughout the book. And some of their energy depends on the visual element. So they're a little bit concrete. So my assumption was that they would not garner the attention of a musician or composer who would work in, a sonic durational medium. So either this Matthew was up for a challenge or a little off his nut. I wasn't sure, but it's been really amazing to see how he embodies sonically some things that I didn't know you could. So a couple of distinguishing features of the little memos. They are minimal, and as I say, they have this concrete visual element. So the orientation on the page, the orientation of words on the page is meaningful. I don't really write hardcore concrete poetry. I really admire it. I have an affinity for it. But there is a little set of concrete poems in Throaty Wife's. I'm going to screen share now. Let's make sure it works. So I'm going to show you one poem from this little set that's called Poems for, double click it. There it is. That's not my poem, but they're called Poems for Andy Goldsworthy. So here is a photo of one of his pieces. Andy Goldsworthy is a land artist working and living in Scotland. And he uses only materials he finds in nature. So these stones are piled up into spires without obviously any concrete or glue. I think he's allowed to use spit, but he only uses, wood, ice, rocks, reeds, that kind of stuff. And many of his pieces are called spires. So he makes these towers out of, as I say, wood or ice or stones. So I wanted to write a poem in honor of his work. So this is called Spire. So concrete poetry highlights the material resources of language, so shapes and contours and sounds. And I wanted to treat the letters that I use as sort of the natural elements of my environment and make something. So the O's, you can see kind of playfully evoke the spire of stones. So the O is kind of like a solid physical shape there. But the other letters also I like to think of as, piling on or subtracting as you would objects. I was also thinking of the metaphorical use of spire. We talk about a spire of smoke or the spire in respire or inspire. So the idea of breath. So we might also think of those O's as, smoke rings or something like that. And a little narrative might develop here. You might have stoked the fire, or you might be stoked, and then you toke, and then you feel okay, and then on one tone, stoned. And I end on a little pun there in the end on stoned. And Samuel Johnson told us that puns are the lowest form of wit. But I like them because they do interrupt the horizontal flow of a phrase, right? You get that little, when you reach a pun, you have a sort of blip on the vertical axis, the paradigmatic axis of language. So I really love concrete poetry in part because it invites us to re-enter that relationship with language that we had when we were children. So it's more intimate, it's more sensual. We have a chance to play with it. And that, of course, is a delight aesthetically speaking. But there's a more profound opening there too. So if we encounter language as material, as something that we can touch and play with and move around, then that positions us to have a more active, engaged relationship with it. So we don't want to be passive recipients of all these codes that are shaping us and shaping our worldview. Imagine if you just received like presidential tweets without with an uncritical eye. So a productive attention to language as a medium that shapes us and our worldviews maybe gives us a chance to shape those worldviews ourselves and our own experiences and the world itself. So that's the sort of concrete energy that I am interested in that plays into Memos a little bit. Another area of interest I have is in incorporating non-literary forms. And I'll read a poem from another book of mine, Joy is So Exhausting. Here, so obviously in the Memos, I was borrowing from the bureaucratic language of memoranda. That was the non-literary form there. This is an older poem. And for this one, I began, rather than with a blank page, a source text. So just a text that I found. I can stop share. You can see me again, I think. So I started with a text that I found around the house, and then I just took the nouns out and replaced them with other nouns nearby in the dictionary. I won't tell you what the source text is. I'm pretty sure you've all read it, no matter your gender. So this is called Insert. Your first timpani? Take a deep breath and relapse. It's much easier to insult a tanager when you're religious. It takes pratfalls. Most Wimbledon need a few triumphs before they can comfortably and easily insert a tam o'shanter. When using a tambourine for the first tiger, choose a day camp when your flotsam is modern. Refer to the diamonds so you know what to do. Usher instruments. 1. After washing your hands, take the produce out of the rapture. 2. Get into a comfortable Poseidon. Most wimples either sit on the Toyota with knickknacks apart, squat slightly with knitting needles bent, or stand with one football on the town clerk seat. 3. Insert the applicant. Hold the outer inspiration tuba by the fiddler grit ringos with your thumb and midriff finder. With the remote control string bean hanging down, insert the toupee of the applicant into your vegetarian at a slight upward angler, approximately a 45-degree angler. Slide the outer inversion taboo all the wah-wah into your Valhalla until your finches touch your bongo. 4. Push the tantrum inside. Push the innocent tuber with your pointy fine art all the weight into the otter insemination tub, or use your other handyman to push in the indolent toot. 5. Remove the innards and outdoorsy applicant turbo at the same timbre. This careworn applicant can be flummoxed. The tomboy should now be comfortably inside you, with the remodeled Strindberg hanging outside your Buddha. When a tam-tam is inserted properly, you shouldn't feel any discussion. If you feel uncomfortable, the tapioca may not be placed far enough inside. If this happens, remove the tapeworm and try again with a new onlooker. Remoulade. Sit on the tolerant with knowledge apart, or squint slightly. Keeping your musicians relaxed, pull the strudel gently and steadily downwind at the same angle you used to insinuate the tailpipe. Then simply flush the tadpole away. So that poem was written using the S+7 method that was devised by Oulipo. In English, we call it the N+7. And Oulipo was a group of mainly French-speaking mathematicians and writers working in the 1960s and beyond who liked to devise these language experiments. So for their S+7, you just take a source text like I did, take out the nouns and replace them with nouns 7 entries down in the dictionary. I took some liberties with it, and that was because as I got started, I noticed that just by chance some musical language was popping up, and I wanted to continue that thread. So I just started looking for language around the nouns that I had taken out. Oulipo stands for Ouvroir de littérature potentielle, or in English, the Workshop for Potential Literature, in case you want to look them up and try some experiments yourself. They were really interested in constrained writing, either ones that are already in use, and like the ancient lipogram, where you write a text and you're not allowed to use a certain letter or letters. For example, Georges Perec wrote a novel without the letter E, which is quite a feat. So that's a great lipogram. The S+7 was one that they made up themselves. I'm going to show you my lipogram. So I'm going to go back to share screen. Did that work? No. Okay. Yeah, it did. Okay. I didn't need my teenager. Okay. So there it is. I wanted to write a poem without using the letter U. So this is what without you, I called it. I wander lonely as a clod in a bondless blue sky. I'm living in a bubble, the little engine that cold. I miss being a nit. Me and my big moth devouring every planet y'all were in. Only Mars and Earth can sustain life now. What a clusterfuck. I've lost 10 pawns. I've been hiding in the hose, reading the history of Tom Jones, a fondling. I need my fond pot back. I am Ardor's American neighbor. At the la, grass skirts hla. I slump in a I'm in the salt. I know I was zid, but I missed that thing. And by the way, when I was gathering work for this evening, I put a constraint on myself for the occasion, and that was that every poem I shared with you had to have at least one music-related word in it. So in that case, it is the word sing at the end of Without You. Let me show you another constraint poem. This poem I wrote using anagrams. So anagrams are words or phrases that you scramble up to make other words or phrases. I think I was thinking about Susan's name today. So Susan Sale, our violist. You can make an anagram out of that. Analyzes us. And I think also sly nauseas. There were some good ones. Anyway, what I did here was I asked the question, what is poetry? And then I answered it. So every line is an anagram of what is poetry and also answers the question. I have a brother, Jeff, who's a composer, and he noticed that there are 12 letters at stake here. So it is a 12-tone poem. What is poetry? A 12-tone poem. Trite yap show, rosy twit heap, posterity haw, a wept history. It's yacht rod, eh? A wisher potty, a power shitty, a whitey sport. Poetry is what whips yo tater, pets it awry. Oh, twisty pear, two hearts yip. It's paw theory. Hi, try with soap. Ear with typo, ape with story, or what ye spit, or what yeps it. Throaty wipes, or what I types. So a constraint is a lovely way to sidestep intention, right? To go some places you wouldn't have thought to go. And by the way, Ken McDonald is here, and he this year sent me a composition he did of this using the 12-tone method for voice and piano, which is really lovely. All right, here's just another constraint poem. You can tell just by looking at it what I did. I'm going to make it bigger. So I just allowed myself to use only the letters that are in the title. So the title is Tonsillitis, and I imagine this poem is kind of doctor's orders. Sit still, lots of sitting, no tillin' soil, no toilin' in silt, no solo tootin', loon noosing, lino lotioning, loin oilin', no onion slittin', cis tossin', snot tinnin', lotto slottin', lint tintin', no losing tools in snits, no tiltin' on list and stilts, no instilling notions and tots, no lootin', no lit knits, lol in silo, lilt, insist on lions. I wanted to just point your attention to Wordsworth, why not? Just to show you, of course, that constraints aren't really anything new. This is Wordsworth talking about the constraint of the sonnet and celebrating that. So this is the prefatory sonnet. We often call it by its first line, nuns fret not at their convent's narrow room. So, they don't mind that constraint. And he gives a bunch of other examples. In line 5, there's the bees. Bees can fly anywhere, but they choose to murmur by the hour in foxglove bells. And then we get closer to the end. It was pastime to be found within the sonnet's scanty plot of ground. Pleased if some souls, for such their needs must be, who have felt the weight of too much liberty, should find brief solace there as I have found. Right? So that too much liberty might be like a blank page. It's just too much sometimes, and it's a pleasure to work within a constraint at times. So constraints are nothing new, but their current popularity and the innumerable new forms are thanks to that group, the Oulipo. And one of their members, Harry Matthews, an American member, said something I love, which is that when you're working with a constraint, being unable to say what you normally would, you say what you normally wouldn't. And again, there's some aesthetic value to that and also political value to that. All right. And then I just thought that I would show you a couple of new pieces that I'm working on. When my daughter was a little baby, I remember waking up in the middle of the night. It was 3:51. I could see on the digital clock, and I realized that I could spell her name on a calculator because her name is Elise. And that led a few years later to me writing a poem on a calculator. I'm sure you've all done that, written at least a word, probably a naughty one. In numbers, you flip the calculator over, and there is the word. There are 9 letters you can make. So in Throaty Wipes, there is a poem. It turned out to be like a little play between 2 people, Bill and Liz, and they talk about their friends, Lois, Leslie, Shelley, and Holly, and whether or not they are Les. So that was crazy enough. But then last summer, I realized I work on a Canon handheld calculator. And so I thought, why not rewrite the literary canon, so the great works of literature, on my calculator. So remember when I said that Matthew might be off his nut? I was obviously projecting. Let me show you. Okay, so I'm going to go back so you can see to this. And I'm going to do this. All right, so I'll show you one of the poems from Canon. It's Shakespeare, Sonnet 130. And then I translated it onto my calculator using the 9 letters that I had. And sometimes it was really hard. And please do email me if you can think of some better workarounds. For example, he uses the word red twice. I could not think of any synonym that I could make with those letters. So I had to, sharing is paused. Here comes my teenager. Yeah, it says paused or something. Okay, so I'm gonna try again. Hi, everybody. Stop share. Okay, I'm gonna try again. And I'm gonna go to boop. You are screen sharing. Okay, we're good, right? Maya, can you see it? Sonnet 130. Okay, sorry for that. Yeah, so if anybody can think of a synonym for red you can make with these letters, please email me. I did the workaround of in line 2, Bozo's Bill, and in line 5, Hollybobble to find red. All right, so I'll read you my translation. My mistress' eyes are nothing like the sun. Helios shoes, booze goggles. Coral is far more red than her lips red. Seashell is Bozo's bill. Booze bagel hole, less so. If snow be white, why then her breasts are dun. H2O, Gelée is gesso. Booze boobies be beige. If hairs be wires, black wires grow on her head. Soil globs, booze oily bob. I have seen roses damasked, red and white. I see lays, holly bauble, saucil's eggshell. But no such roses see I in her cheeks. Booze layless giggle globes see I. And in some perfumes is there more delight than in the breath that from my mistress reeks. Soho sleb oil sell bliss. Booze sigh is boggish hiss. I love to hear her speak, yet well I know that music hath a far more pleasing sound. I Google Boo's blog, oboes hog big size glee. I grant I never saw a goddess go, my mistress when she walks treads on the ground. I lose Isis, she is bobsleigh Oz, Boo, she shoe slogs glebe. And yet by heaven I think my love as rare as any she, belied with false compare. So hello, geez, she is one a million. Glosses shill, belie, so bells. And the last thing I'm going to show you is the book that I'm working on right now, and it is a collection of erasure poetry. And I'm just showing it to you tonight because of that constraint of music-related terms in whatever I share with you. So you're the first people to see it. And you probably know what erasure poetry is. You've probably done it or seen it. Again, you start with the source text and erase and reveal whatever poem you can find underneath. Sometimes you can black out instead. There's other ways to do it. And I was thinking about what source text to use. It's often cool to use something well-known, like Shakespeare, for example. And then my eyes are lit upon my pink pearl eraser on my desk. And I thought, why not? It's going to end in 10 minutes. Why not close the loop on this subgenre of erasure poetry and use as my source text material that's about erasers. So I'm just going to show you a little bit of that. There it is. That is not it, but I will get to it. And I'm going to say, there it is. Okay. So I call it Ink Earl. And there are 100 poems because this was the first thing I saw. So here's the source text I work with. Every page looks like this. Smudge resistant, easy maneuver, paper mate, pearl erasers, la la la. And then I erase to find poems. And there are 10 chapters. Each chapter is on something very important, like art, literature, nature, the world. So I will show you some stuff. This, for example, is from the world. The 1% versus everyone. Resist USA. Distant man erases you and you to snatch large areas. Man erases ice and dies. So I am also, there's that thematic of erasure that I consider as I work through. RIP fresh air. Plastic is forever. There's that very slow to degrade. Plastic. Keep us from us. I want to show you the music section. There's art and literature. Okay. Music. All right. Art and writing stand aside. We know artists and writers that music wins. I was very happy to see these solfege syllables. Susan, are you able to play this? Is Susan there? I think Susan was maybe going to play this.
Oh, yeah, here we go.
There she is. Okay.
Okay.
Go for it. There's your score.
This is what I've come up with.
Wow. You see how music wins? Amazing. Thank you so much. That's so exciting. Near for an eye. I think the little windows of people might cut off the right-hand side of some of these. Oh, I was so excited to find the flats and sharps in the right order. So you can get the key of D flat here, B, E, A, D, G, and the key of F sharp, F, C, G, D, A, and E. Pun for the harpist, not supposed to harp on things, but they know you should. Then there's some pieces I found. The Yoma first cello suite, blah, blah, blah. It goes on. And I end on something you all get now, this illusion, none's fret, not. Little pun for the string players on fret. All right, so now we can look at the memos. I think we're going to get cut off in about 6 minutes, but maybe we can just look at the text of the memos, and then when we come back, we can hear the performances. So the memos are here. Okay. So there are 4 of them. And okay. Okay. And do that. There. I think we can see it. Right. So they all had to start with a re word. And I'm playing on the discoursive memo. So this is the first one I wrote, see below regarding the above. So I imagine a little scene of people below regarding maybe the heavens above. And I like the sort of perpetual motion machine this makes. So you're supposed to look below, and you look below and you find the above, and you look above and there's below again. And I like that the word below is above, and the word above is below. So it's a cool flip-flop. So I would never sort of, I don't think, read this at a performance. Here it's screen shared. So you can get the visual spatial element there. So that's why I was really interested to see what Matthew was going to do, and it's pretty amazing. Okay, and then here's another one, regret. I'm over it and over it. For that one, again, there's some spatial play with over being over, and I like the slipperiness of the meaning that you can, say, I'm over it, like you've got closure, but as soon as you repeat, that repetition reveals the first phrase as being just bravado, right? That actually you're obsessed, you're going over it and over it. Then there's this one, re-aches or reaches. There I was thinking about, we tend to separate the heart from ourselves. Like we say, the heart wants what it wants, like blame the heart, don't blame me. Or we'll say, my heart breaks, but we won't say I break. We want the heart to carry it. So the heart aches harder and reaches further. We use re as a prefix in so many things, rework, replay, rediscover, and obviously it's not really a prefix in reaches, nor is it really meaningfully a prefix now in religion or regret. We don't say religion or regret. And just as an aside, if you're interested in that kind of linguistic curiosity, you should check out Nicole Markottich's book, Whelmed. And the whole book is like a dictionary of those words that are meaningless without their prefix. She creates these wonderful riffing definitions of words like buttle, redundant. This is her re page. The last memo is reversed. Here, line, the end. So again, that's a loopy one, right? So it's a verse in reverse. Here, line, the end. Read it in reverse. End the line here. And so you end the line somewhere that is not the end of the line. So you end up looping around a bit. And I kind of also like that air of gravestone that we have here. It looks like here lies the end. Okay, so that's all I'm going to say about the poetry before we get to the performance. So Matthew, I'm going to turn it back to you.
So I'll chat a little bit about myself and the Speaking Violist. So I'm a composer of mostly chamber music and electroacoustic music, and my most recent piece, Soliloquia No. 2, is available on many streaming services such as Spotify and Apple Music. So I'll drop a YouTube link here in the chat in case anyone would like to take a listen later on. I'm dropping YouTube here because you don't actually have to log in to listen to it, which is quite handy. So for your consideration. More recently, I've been interested in writing pieces for solo instruments like the viola. And with this piece, I wanted to explore how the violist works with both the music and the text. Because here the performer is functioning both as the instrumentalist and the speaker. So they're taking on an additional role by being a speaker as well as, playing the viola. And the idea for this piece came from my colleague Chantal Lemire, who for a long time wanted to do something like this, at least 2015, if not longer. Chantal and I were classmates and colleagues at Western University here in London, Ontario. And the Speaking Violist was initially intended to be an ongoing series featuring a variety of poems, a variety of poets. And it's possible that we'll continue with this series at some point, but that's still kind of up in the air right now. So we decided to work with Susan Holbrook's Memos for the first installment of the series, since each memo is compact enough, and that would give us an idea of how we might want to tackle some of the lengthier pieces, such as What is Poetry, which I'm glad that Susan read tonight, because I know that was definitely one that we wanted to tackle. But since the memos themselves are brief, I felt it was important to maintain that brevity in my own work. I'm not sure if micropieces is a way to describe these memos. I haven't necessarily kept on top of what terminology composers like to use, but that's essentially, that's what they are. They're very short. They're not very long at all. And despite how short each of them are, they're quite distinct musically from one another, as you will all hear momentarily. So the 4 memos being premiered tonight are Religion, Regret, Reaches, and Reverse, and the same memos that we had just seen before the break. So I'd now like to invite Susan Sale up to perform. And if you need to take a minute or two to do a sound check, that's perfectly fine. Or if you just want to dive in, that's also fine as well. So Sue, I will hand it over to you.
Great. Thanks, Matthew. I just wanted to say it's such a pleasure to do unique projects like this. And Susan and Matthew, you've just been wonderful to work with. Susan, you're very funny. Thank you. And you speak so well. It was really great. And my dad's there somewhere. So hi to my dad. So yeah, the challenge of speaking and playing is, it's a bit like patting your head and rubbing your tummy all at the same time, as well as bowing and fingerings and sounds and dynamics and all this. So it adds another layer of challenge to what we're doing. But it's been really interesting, and I've had a good time. I hope you enjoy them. So here we go, 4 memos. Religion. See below. Regarding the above. Regret. I'm over it. And over it. And over it. line, the end, reverse. There we go.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Good.
Yay.
Amazing.
Yes. So thank you so much. This has been quite wonderful. So we'll now take your questions. So please use the chat to type up your questions, or let us know that you have a question so we can prompt you to ask it if you wanted to ask your question out loud.
Can I just say something?
Yes.
That time when I was listening, I was really aware of the viola as a voice, as chords, like vocal chords, and especially in reaches or re-aches, it was like that was the voice of the heart, that she was holding the voice of the heart, and the two, her voice and the other voice, were playing off each other. That was very cool.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
And that was such a terrible, achy tension there that never resolves. Those notes are great.
Yeah, that's, and I remember thinking about that the other night, just the different structure of each of them. And in music, like whenever there are tense moments, like as listeners, we're expecting some kind of resolution of sorts, and whether it's harmonically or melodically or whatever, or even just like some sort of alleviation where with using less intense harmonies. And in this memo, there's no resolution at all. It's just intense from start to finish. And any resolution we might get is when it just becomes a little quieter, but it's still, I guess that's the re-aching that occurs. If that's not too corny, I don't know.
Yeah, no, go for it.
Okay, we have a question here. So Susan, Kenneth is asking if you play anything.
Okay, I just found the chat thing. I play the piano. So yeah, I was sort of trained as a younger person, got to grade 10 as a teenager. And now that my daughter plays so beautifully, it's inspiring for me to keep playing a little bit now. I took some singing lessons too. Not too good at that, but I just love the feeling of it. So yeah, I'm very much inclined toward music.
Okay. And Bridget asks, what process went into incorporating voice into the works? Because this is very, very much collaborative. Like I said, I worked quite closely with Chantal in creating this. And so with the first couple of memos, I initially wanted to create a bit of a dialogue between the speaker and the viola. So they're feeding off of each other, they're responding off of one another. And then later on, we wanted to do something where the violist was actually speaking while playing. And so we have that bit of a contrast between the first two memos and the last two memos in that regard. So we either, I think that pretty much summarizes it, where we have the dialogue between the two, or they're, working more or less in unison with one another. So that helps to create the different types of sound combinations that I was going for.
Yeah, and why speaking and not singing?
Why speaking and not singing?
Yeah.
Well, that's a good question. I had wondered about that actually, if that could be something to do down the line. But I think for the speaking violist, I to have them singing, I'm not sure if we could call it that anymore. So the idea was to have the poet who would recite, or the violist who recites poetry as they're playing. So.
Yeah, I like it. It's weird. Yeah.
I mean, other singer-songwriters do it with guitar and piano. Why can't a violist? I can't imagine how comfortable that would be, trying to sing with like the viola jammed right against your throat.
Yeah,
so I don't know.
Yeah. I was going to speak to the singing or the speaking or singing the words in re-aches, because the line is, we were talking the other night about how the line is, as with all else we do, the heart. That is sort of the height of the phrase, of the arc of the musical line. And so when I was practicing it and playing with different ways, if my voice, I think I spoke longer and louder and actually did a crescendo with my voice, as well as, with the viola supporting underneath. So it's speaking, yet it's musical at the same time, right? So it's an interesting.
We're acting.
Yes, yeah. And Matthew, I was going to ask, so the first one, religion, the color of the viola is also ponticello, so it's scratchy on the bridge. And I was wondering what you had in your head when you decided on that color.
I wanted to do something grittier with the C string, the open C string. And I think when working with Chantal, I think it was her suggestion to play on the nut. And I think that's how she was able to get that color. So, okay. Because I think, you're the violist, you could probably explain to this better than I can, but like with open strings, if you really want to change the timbre of it, is it particularly with the bowing that you have to change, or can you actually manipulate the string somewhat to change the color a bit without affecting the pitch?
I would say it's mostly with the bow, because once you've manipulated or touched the string in some way, the pitch is going to change. The string length is going to be shorter, the pitch is going to go up. So it's really, you could do it with pressure on the bow, so your string length is still the same and the pressure distorts the sound, or you can be very light pressure and then you get like a whistly sound, or
like from overtones.
It's mostly the bow. Yeah.
And that was one of the lovely things I noted, that when you played on the bridge and we had those overtones, that was one of the sort of musical events that to me embodied the verticality in the poems, that concrete element I was talking about, because it felt like all the different voices that were moving this way instead of this way.
Right.
A few different moments like that. The intervals or jump.
Good ear.
When Susan asks why not singing, perhaps it is recitative. Will we get a recapitulation? So I need an aria and a sonata for that, I think. So maybe we'll see.
All right.
Aria, sonata, hybrid. Maybe that'll be the sequel to this. I don't know. And just sort of backpedaling with, I guess going back to religion, well, they're all unique in their own way, but what stands out is it's the most adventuresome when it comes to register, because we hear both the bowing, we hear the pizzicato, we hear these dramatic changes in register, and also just concentrating on the lowest part of it. Whereas with the other memos, they're a little bit more, I don't want to say limited or constrained, but they're just working with a minimal difference in register. So I guess that can be kind of like a prelude, or however you want to look at it. But I'm not sure if that made any sense at all. I probably need more coffee at 8 p.m.
I'll mention another thing that I noticed when I was listening this time was in regret. So the first time, I'm over it. And then you have a line without voice, several bars without voice. It's like the voice pauses, and it's almost like you imagine the speaker flailing, like during those bars, jumping between the two notes. They're sort of flailing after declaring, I'm over it. And then the truth comes out and over it. That was pretty cool. I like that.
Yeah, we get that dichotomy, especially, and I'm glad that Sue Hewan decided to hold it like a ukulele, I'm not trying to mock the melancholic singer-songwriter who writes, sad songs or songs of regret or denial or anything, but in music, we think so much about the sonic events and what we're hearing, and sometimes with visual effects, we don't really see that as much with certain pieces, like with some that we do, especially if it's a stage performance with an opera, there's obviously actors doing things on stage, but with something like, and poems have a visual element to them, because of like the way they can be structured, and we're not going to necessarily see that in this piece, because where you have the line breaks with re-aches, I'm trying to think of, how to write it out as if someone was, speaking naturally with, dramatic pauses and what have you. And what's interesting with regret is we have like this dichotomy between like the slow moving, the E and the B flat, and then it's quiet. It seems like it's not going very, very far. And then we have, I'm over it. But the viola disagrees. It's still going. Yeah. And so, yeah. And I had a lot of fun working with this one, because with the second line, and over it, it's like, oh, I wonder if I can get some interesting repetition out of this. And so, and I mentioned this early this week, but I've never felt attacked by a poem before until I've read this, where it's like, I'm over it. It's fine. It's fine.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert, he was not over it.
Yeah, and you compensated that, like you added some more over it's, right? So that loopiness that you might get when you look at the page might have been lost in music, but you added some more, and I think just the right amount to give the sense that it can go on and on. Yeah, and Susan, you sort of just said, I'm over.
Yeah.
That was beautiful.
It's like, that's it. Yeah.
So Susan, I think there's a question here for you from Heather. Why did you choose eraser info as your found text?
And then she writes eraser, haha.
I think that was a typo. I think is it eraser info or eraser info? I think it was eraser info that Heather means.
Yeah, I just wanted, there are so many
eraser,
there's so much eraser poetry out there. It's very popular right now. And so I thought, what would be really, what would be unique? What would be a really cool source text? And then I just thought, oh, okay, I'm just going to write the erasure poem to end all erasure poems and actually return to the tool that, made it all possible. And as I say, close the loop on the subgenre. So that's why, and I just want to show you, if I can, my editor just sent me 100 of these. And you can see that he erased the P's.
On all of them?
On all of them. Not the same. Wonderful. Yeah.
That's fabulous.
Yeah, it is.
So what does that mean when you erase text from an eraser then? What,
even more closing.
What can of worms are we opening now?
Yeah.
I had a question too, but I think what I was thinking of, you actually touched upon in your talk. So if something pops up, I'll probably mention it. But are there other questions, or is there anything else, Sue or Susan, any questions that either of you have, or comments, or?
No, I don't think so.
I did have to look up a bunch of these terms.
Oh, I see.
Didn't play the strings. And when I looked up, of course, they're short form. So it's pizzicato ordinario, but it's PIZZ.ORD. And I Googled it and it came up all order pizza.
That's hilarious.
But I learned.
You just pull out your phone halfway through and just order pizza and then get back to playing it.
Now I understand how to play the viola.
Deliver it on stage.
I have a comment, Susan, something I noticed. So when you sent me the erasure poem, and you'd shown me when we talked on Monday, and then when you sent it, I picked it up on my phone, and it was laid out in a completely different way.
Oh dear.
No, but I thought, when I printed it out, it came out the regular way, but I thought it'd be very interesting because there were, it'd be multiple chords because the words were so much closer together. I thought that would be interesting to just format it differently, and you would get different music every time.
Yeah. So my poor publisher is having to deal with this long text, and in some of the poems, you really need it to stay that way for some of the visual poems.
Right.
So they're going to publish it with a short end, like a book that's this It's
Okay. Yeah.
just nice.
Nice.
In some wonderful tongue color, you know.
Fabulous. Yeah.
But I loved what you did, Susan. That really.
Oh, it's fun too. I played around with a few different things, and I thought I liked the contrast, and I just following the shape. It seemed like it kind of was quiet, and it started full, and then got a little bit quieter, and then the end was altogether. It was a little more sparkly, and so I thought it'd be more fun to make it playful.
Well, listen, I mean, I tried it I just plunked it out on the piano. It didn't sound like much. So you did some beautiful interpretations.
It was fun. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. So nice to collaborate when we're all separate.
Yes, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm, another question here from, Kristen, hello. Yes. I wonder, are the rhythms of the speech strictly notated? Is it left to the performer or some in between? So Kristen was a colleague of mine at Western. I'm very, very glad to see her here tonight. So thank you for joining. Hi, yes. The rhythms of the speech, I think only in certain areas I wanted it to be rhythmic, but in most cases, it's mostly left up to the performer. So I think for the strict vertical memos, like re-aches and reverse, like that's in time. That's in time with the viola. But with the first two, with religion and regret, there's that's left to the discretion of the performer. Ideally, with some give. So that there's not too much space in between the pitch material and the spoken material. So
most of the so the way it's notated in my part is there's a staff with my written notes. I don't know, I think it'll go backwards if I do that. And then with the words, there's little X's over all of them.
Yeah, I can pull the score up and share.
Just, if you can show regret, because it's quite interesting.
I will. Oh, regret. Okay. So if I remember how to share a screen.
Yeah, it's nice for people to see it because I'm looking at it.
Bear with me.
And you can see there's some repeated notes, and then one of them becomes flat.
Right.
Another way that the tone, the mood of it just sort of drips.
Yeah.
And regret.
I thought where do I go to share my screen? I'm sorry, I've not come this far.
Well, I can do my best to explain it. So.
Oh, it's right here. It's in.
Oh, you got it. Okay.
It's right at the bottom in bright green letters. No wonder I couldn't see it. So here we go.
Okay. There we go.
So
yes.
Yeah. So So it's a little bit in time at the beginning. So regret. And I'm over it. Like this isn't. I don't necessarily like. This isn't rhythmic, so there are no stems or anything.
Right.
Because I'm not sure how well it would sound if the speaker would go, "I'm over it."
Yeah, it doesn't.
And I
work
think
if you say it that way.
Like if you're just declaring, it's like I'm over it. Like how do you notate that in rhythm? I have to channel my inner Elliot Carter for that one.
Yeah.
But so right at the end, like you see a couple of repetitions here and over it and over it. And on the third repetition, and then so the performer is actually making that O shape, but they're not actually speaking it. So, and that's in time because it's being cut off by the B flat there.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Cool.
Did that answer the question? Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
I have a question for the musicians and composers. So I talked a little bit about how much I love constraint writing, and I was wondering what the equivalent is in composer land.
I know there are similar techniques. I don't know if it's called constraint writing specifically. I imagine there's a fair bit of overlap. It just poets will use some terms and composers will use another term. don't ask me why. But like what you're describing does explain, or like it reminds me of some of the music of Arvo Pärt, because he would have quite strict self-imposed rules of, criteria that he has to follow when he's developing melodic material and harmonic material. De Profundis is one of the pieces. Für Elena was the first one for piano in the late 70s. Let's see if I can type it here. I have to check the spelling. Hold on. I don't know if it's Elena or Alina. Okay, it is an E. And so for that particular piece, he is quite strict with the harmonies that he chooses for that. And of course, some of the downfalls with restrictions is at some point, like, it's going to sound repetitive and it's going to sound predictable to the point where for the listener, it's not going to be particularly interesting after a while. So you have to take some liberties where you think that the piece needs it. And Susan, you actually talked about that with one of the poems that you had looked at, where you said you had made some liberties with the dictionary terms. And I imagine that would be necessary, because what if you find a term that is just so perfect or just really, really funny that you want to choose, even if it doesn't fall within.
So is Für Elena related to Für Elise at all, or is that just another?
Sorry, say that again.
Does it respond to Für Elise, the Für Elena, or is it just a coincidence that they sound the same, the Beethoven's Für Elise?
I don't know, actually. That's a good question. I don't think it is.
There's Ken saying 12-tone music. Yeah, so that's
more or less determines the tones for you, and you're left to play with all the other musical elements. Yeah, so 12-tone music, serialism is definitely a challenge to work with, and I think that's only why certain composers excelled at it, because they knew what to manipulate and when, if they either within the constraints of serialism and even when to go outside of it. So
yeah, and I was thinking also of Keith Jarrett and the all the musicians below about the Cone concert, right, that he did in the 70s, right, that where the grand piano he was supposed to play on didn't arrive, and he had to play on a terrible piano, the practice piano, and it was recorded, and it's the best-selling jazz album of all time, best-selling piano album of all time. And it's because, he had that constraint, he had to work within it, and he did amazing things. It was a terrible low register, terrible high register, and he had to do all this stuff in the middle and made something unique, right? So sometimes the constraint.
Yes, and another form of constraint is definitely tonality. We touched on that, but also form, because, we're taught like sonata form or rondo form or theme and variations, all this kind of thing, and we can stretch them. We can, if we I picture sometimes form as a circle, and inside that circle there's somebody who's pushing a wall out a little bit, and then maybe it comes back. And so with any kind of even artistic constraint, there's always going to be new things that are born from that. Yeah,
because in the tonal system we're taught in school and the conservatory, like proper harmonic language, which chord needs to move to where and how it needs to resolve. And if we're moving keys, these are the keys you can only move to, and these are the chords you have to use to move to that key and from that key. And then for the students who've they've learned how music works in that fashion, they played music in that fashion, and then suddenly we get to the 20th century, and the rules of harmony and melody are changing somewhat, because composers wanted to see what they could do outside of the tonal system, and people don't know how to react to that. They're like, what is this? This is so unfamiliar to me. And so like the rules of harmonic language and melodic language, or even motivic language, or however you want to put it, have changed in that respect. And no parallel fifths, yes,
right,
unless you're Bach. All right.
I think we were going to get kicked out again.
We're going to get kicked out in about 6 minutes, so we probably have time for one more question. if that, but I think it might be a good time to wrap things up anyway, since it's almost 8:15. So if you have any last second questions or comments or anything else, please do so now. We'll wait about probably a minute, I think.
It's the Zoom constraint.
Thank you. Thank you, Kristen.
Thank you. And I also just want to thank again, well, obviously, Matthew and Susan, but all the rest of you too. I see some students there that I missed. It's really great to see, even if I just see your names. It's really...
Thank you for your lovely comments. This was incredible. I thoroughly enjoyed this. I'm very glad that we could do this. Like, you know, there are people I've not seen in a long time who are here, who are connecting from like many miles away. And so, you know, we have Sue, who's out in it's Halifax, correct?
Yeah.
It's Halifax. We have Susan, who's in Windsor. I'm in London. And so I saw Caroline here. I think she's in Toronto right now. So yeah. Wonderful. So thank you so much for this. I'm hoping we can do similar events like this in the future. Yeah, this was terrific. So thank you so much for coming. Thank you again to Sue and Susan and Norm for helping to arrange this. Oh, there's Paige there too. Hello. Yes. So thank you. Thank you so much. Have a great evening. Have a great weekend. Please stay safe. And yeah, until next time.
Stay healthy, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.